Hello once again, and welcome to another edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. Today, we're joined by the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, and 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director, Ryan Young. I'm Doug Falconer. I'm Agriculture Director at GX94 in Yorkton. Of course, first of all, we wanted to talk about the crops, and both the Manitoba and Saskatchewan crop reports that came out this week suggested that rain over the past week either helped crops along or else hindered haying. What was your take on that, Kevin?
Well, certainly there was some huge rainfalls. I'm a farm is situated at Caber. We have a cabin at Eston Regional Park, which is right on the riverside, right on the north side of the South Saskatchewan. And I don't know whether you remember, but a number of weeks ago they had a huge flood go through the regional park and created a lot of damage to their golf course. Well, this past week they had a huge rain right in the community and around the community of Eston, just a little bit further north, where depending upon the rain gauge, it was 3 to 5 inches of rain in a short period of time and caused extensive flooding. So those kind of huge rain events are certainly not welcome, but the rainfall has really improved crop prospects, and crop prospects in west central Saskatchewan are dramatically better than southwestern Saskatchewan, where we didn't start getting rain as soon as the west central region, and crops are not nearly as good on average south of the South Saskatchewan River.
Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Matt Struthers from Saskatchewan Agriculture on the crop report. Anything stand out for you there?
One of the things that stood out was just kind of building off of what Kevin was talking about with some rainfall that came in some areas of the province, like Eston, for example. They got the most rainfall. It's likely that those areas in the southwest where it's been dry for the most part and crops have been under stress because of the numerous weeks of dry and hot conditions as well. It might be a little bit too late for that rain. So it's more or less just kind of, stocking up on topsoil moisture for the next year. Or it came at the right time where some crops might have been, kind of on the verge of losing their yield potential, but with that rain kind of saved it for the harvest. So that's kind of a positive thing. In my talk with Matthew Struthers, it's actually been a little while since I talked to Matthew, so I was pretty excited to speak with him about the crop report. But um, kind of overall, rain was obviously the big story. Another thing that kind of came to mind outside of the crop report actually was a couple of producers that I listened to and or talked to. One fella by the name of Stuart Lawrence in the West Central region. He said crops over there are slightly above average according to his point of view. So that's good to hear, especially for that area. And hopefully the crops mature in time for harvest. And then I talked to Bill Probilski, the president of APAS. He farms west of Yorkton, and he said his crops look pretty good. Not a bumper crop by any means, but looking good enough that they'll mature and be ready to go for harvest in the next month or so. And he was the one that actually said, had they not got the rain last weekend, they were looking at some yield loss. So a positive light there.
I had a
It's
chance.
interesting.
Okay.
Interesting, Doug. I talked with a producer down in the far southwest corner of the province, and he figures that the first field peas will be harvested within the next week, and that's true of this area a little bit further north in the southwest, and even traveled this week from through Swift Current through Moose Jaw to Regina, and along the way you do see quite a few field pea crops that are not very far away from harvest. So I wouldn't be surprised that a week from now we will have the first reports of people with their combines out.
Yeah, and I had a chance to speak with James Fry from Manitoba Agriculture in the Roblin area this past week, and he said there's been some rain. They didn't have quite the downpours that we had here in Saskatchewan, but he said the cooler temperatures for this time of year here in July have really helped crops there as well. So that's good news on the western Manitoba side of the crops. Agri-stability changes. We talked a little bit about it last Friday, the big announcement that was made about agri-stability changes. A number of farm groups commented on it, and Ryan, you had a chance to talk to them about that.
Yeah, that was again Bill Probilski of APAS and Christina Betker, who's the CEO of the Saskatchewan Cattle Association. Their reaction is pretty much what you would expect. They're applauding the ag minister's commitments to make these changes to agri-stability. For those that haven't been in the loop, and in case you missed it, one of the changes include the max payment cap doubling to $6 million from $3 million. The compensation rate increasing to 90%, so it's a little bit easier to trigger the program. And on that front, Bill Probilski is pleased about that. Christina said that they would have liked to see the max payment cap at $15 million, but having it at $6 million is a step in the right direction. And when I asked Bill about, these changes maybe being a step in the right direction towards, the program being a little bit more responsive, because groups have long advocated for that to make these business risk management programs a lot more immediate and responsive to current challenges. He said it's certainly a step in the right direction. But those changes are for the 2025 program year only. So I'm curious to see if those will stay or if we're going to have other changes for 2026 with regards to those two aspects of the program. That remains to be seen.
Kevin, you had a few questions and maybe a few concerns about what next year will hold for livestock producers when it comes to all this.
Yeah, there's some things that I have to try to get my head around and try to talk and get the details of, but they're talking about for the 2026 program changes in how inventory is evaluated, things like rented pasture and feed inventory, and that sort of gets down into the weeds a little bit in program and what those changes might mean going forward. And like Ryan said, it'll be interesting to see whether the increase in the maximum payment and the increase in the compensation rate will be something that ends up sticking around, because once you put those in place, usually there's some problem in agriculture every year, and it might be pretty hard for the government to back out of those and reduce that. The trigger for agri-stability hasn't changed, but if you do trigger, the compensation rate has changed. It'll also be interesting to see, there's quite a push on now. They've extended the deadline for joining agri-stability, and it's July 31st. It'll be interesting to see if we can get some numbers to see if there are more producers joining and whether there's been an increase in enrollment due to these changes, due to the conditions producers are facing, due to the promotion of the program.
All right. Of course, that's July 31st. That's next Thursday. And then August 1st, which is next Friday, the beef cattle checkoff changes. Ryan, you did a story on that as well.
Yeah, just to kind of understand how the checkoff works, I talked with the general manager of the Canadian Checkoff Agency, Melinda Gurman, about that, just kind of how the system works. And interestingly enough, what I learned was Western provinces like BC, Alberta, and Saskatchewan, they used a different system for the checkoff compared to the Eastern provinces like Manitoba, Ontario, and Quebec. This change is also to the national rate, and it applies more to the west than to the east. So the new change, from what I understand, is basically if you're a Saskatchewan producer and you sell cattle to a feedlot in Alberta, your provincial checkoff rate is what the national rate will be. So your provincial checkoff rate will follow you wherever you sell your cattle. So for Saskatchewan, that checkoff rate is increasing to $5.25 per head next Friday, August 1st. So that'll provide a little bit more flexibility and make it easier for producers and, have less confusion as the old system before. Take that example again where you have your cattle in Saskatchewan and sell it in Alberta. You would have to pay the Alberta checkoff rate, which is $4.50 per head. So those are some of the kind of immediate details about that and kind of how the new system works. So it's kind of followed a year of consultation and discussions with producer-led organizations such as the Saskatchewan Cattle Association. And one more thing about that is the checkoff dollars go toward the Cattle Association's advocacy and research efforts. So if you're ever wondering where your dollars go to, that's where they go to.
Your thoughts on those changes, Kevin?
Well, it was interesting in Roy Rutledge's Weyburn Livestock Market Report, he made mention of don't blame us for these changes. We have to deduct it and submit it, but the money doesn't go to us. It goes to research and advocacy. So producers don't always pay attention to where the checkoffs are where they're going or how they're being used, and whether it's crops or livestock. I think all of us should pay more attention. It is our money going to, and I think it's all worthy. And plus, you might say, well, why does it have to go up? Well, the cost of everything goes up, so the money doesn't go as far as it used to. And if they're doing work and conducting research, it isn't as cheap as it used to be. So, in order to keep pace, now and then producers have to agree to an increase in their checkoffs.
Yeah, I think Ryan, you said there hadn't been a change to the checkoff in like 20 years, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, it's a very long time since the national rate was first implemented, so I guess you could call it a overdue change.
All right. And of course, Ag in Motion, the three of us were there last week for that. And Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Rob O'Connor this week to kind of do a wrap up on how things went. Was he happy with how the 3 day event went?
It sure sounded like it. It certainly met his expectations. The overall attendance of people over the course of the 3 days was around 31,000 people, and they had more than 600 exhibitors at the event as well. So again, kind of excuse me, meeting his expectations and organizers' expectations as well. But the one thing that he really highlighted was the number of international guests that came to Ag in Motion. He said it was around 3 or 4 times as many as he had anticipated. He didn't have any exact numbers in terms of delegations, but he definitely did see an increase in the number of people from Mexico, the States, parts of Europe, etc. So he was really happy about that, and he was also happy with the Great Bin giveaway that we did on Thursday afternoon. He actually stuck around and saw how it all kind of went down and who the winner was, which went to a family around the Yorkton area, believe it or not. So they were able to take the fertilizer bin home, and kind of ironic enough that they were kind of brand loyal to Core Grain. So that was also kind of a fun fact there too. So overall, Rob O'Connor thought this year's event went really well, and they're starting to get producer and exhibitor feedback on what worked, what they need to improve on. The ride and drives, the equipment demonstrations, those are again a hit, especially when it came to the sprayer demonstrations. He said that the sprayers were just non-stop all over the course of the 3 days. So that's definitely going to stay there. The Junior Cattle Show made its debut at Ag in Motion. He said it went really well. There was a lot of good crowds, so there's no reason why they wouldn't bring it back for another year. So a lot of positives to draw from this year's Ag in Motion.
Kevin, you live in Saskatoon. Have you heard anything about Ag in Motion? I'm sure it's fairly positive reviews if you did.
Yeah, I think it really become the go-to show. And I know for my community of Keebury, there were people that attended. Logistics do matter, but it's at a good time of the year. Everybody is there. You get to actually drive and try different pieces of equipment. So if you're going to attend a show, that's a real good one. It doesn't really conflict as much as some timings with spraying operations, or you'll always get some conflicts, but by and large, it has become the go-to event, and it just I think has been a tremendous success. I do worry for them some years where oftentimes we're looking for rain, but if you had a 3 day rain during that time period, being an outdoor show, that really could affect how things work for them. But certainly, the weather held up very well this year and a very successful show.
Kevin, you also had a story this week about the FCC and the financial outlook for farmers.
Yeah, Justin Shepard of FCC senior economist did a bit of an analysis, and this is the broad grain industry. and hearkened it back to January and looked at grain prices then. Well, we had an outlook for what grain prices would be new crop back in January, but that outlook has now improved a little bit. Canola has been up and now down a little bit, but it's still better than it was looking in January. Other major commodities are also looking decent. And then the question is, where is crop potential at across Western Canada? And using the NDVI, what is that again? The difference vegetative index. They think that it looks pretty similar to what we'd have as an average crop. And with late season rains like we've had, that usually bodes well for yield. So they're expecting about an average crop, somewhat better prices than expected in January. So they think the outlook has improved a bit, but they do note that it's still well below the 5-year average as far as financial outlook on an aggregate basis for the grain industry.
And then when it comes to the markets themselves, Ryan, you had a chance to speak with Adam Pacalo about the oilseed and grain markets.
That's right. And over the last couple of weeks, Adam said that for the November canola contract anyway, it's been kind of trending sideways. It hasn't really gone up or down a whole lot recently. But if you were to kind of go back to June 19th, around that time, for example, when canola was at a high of $750 a ton, it's actually gone down $50 a ton over the last month and a bit. So quite a decrease there. And as for wheat futures with the September Minneapolis wheat contract, he said that was kind of trending down lately. And he expects the trend to continue to go downward as the primary factor being weather. Recent weather hasn't been very favorable in different parts of the world, like in the US or China or anything like that. Certainly, the trade talks with Canada and the US don't really help matters either. So everything's kind of in a holding pattern for now. And we probably won't see any prominent market activity until we start harvest.
Kevin, must be hard as a producer to try to figure out when you should start marketing your new crop.
Well, I've signed contracts on a lot of it. So have contracts on maple peas, 2 different varieties, 2 different contracts. Have contract signed on large green lentils. My problem is just trying to produce enough to to get a decent return. I hope to be able to fill my contracts, but I might not have a whole heck of a lot of overage left to market on those crops, unfortunately. And between dry conditions and some hail damage, got some crop that's being baled for cattle feed just because there's no economic yield there. So not going to be a plush year. Won't have to worry too much about bin space, I don't think.
All right. Well, on that note, we'll wrap up this week's edition of the SaskAgToday.com Roundtable. On behalf of 620 CKRM Regina Agri-News Director Ryan Young and the Chief Agricultural Editor for SaskAgToday.com, Kevin Hirsch, I'm GX94 Yorkton Agriculture Director Doug Falconer saying so long until next time.